Get ready to embrace debate. First Take starts now.
Coming up on the First Take podcast, the NFL schedule is out. So how tough will it be for Peyton Manning to return to the Super Bowl? Plus, who's ready to win and who is about to go home in the NBA playoffs? And is there a double standard when it comes to race and fighting in sports? All that and more coming up on the First Take podcast, which starts right now. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Take. I'm Carrie Champion, sitting with Skip Bayless. Stephen A. has the day off. Filling in for him, though, Ryan Clark. Welcome.
Can you start using my middle initial? Can we use T?
Ryan T.
Ryan T. Clark? You need a middle initial today to sit in that seat. By the way, Stephen A. Smith, get well soon, my man.
Yeah, we miss you, friend. Okay, listen, coming up on the show today, gentlemen and folks at home, the NFL schedule has been released. Which team has the easiest and the most difficult road to the Super Bowl, we will discuss. Plus, as draft day draws near, we find out which prospects are moving up and which ones are moving down. Mel Kiper, Tyler Shea will all join the desk to help us sort through it all. But first, the Trailblazers did not get the memo. They did not have home court advantage. They now have a 2-game lead over the Rockets after scoring 46 points in Game 1. LaMarcus Aldridge added 43 on Wednesday. Meanwhile, Dwight Howard asked for the ball and they gave it to him. He had about 25 points in the first half, but only 7 in the second. James Harden disappeared with 18 points on 6 for 19 shooting. 5 turnovers, and he fouled out before the night was over.
We'll focus on Game 3, and we got to do some different things to get LaMarcus, the ball out of his hands. He killed us.
We just got to go out there and play. We got to play together. That's the only way we're going to win. We can't go up there having any negative thoughts about anybody on our team. We got to be positive, and that's what the guys who've been there before just have to step up and do it. We can't focus on these last 2 games. They came in and they played great. Well, we just got to go there and win.
Okay. Well, are the Rockets done is the question. Skip Bayless is for you.
Ryan Clark, Ryan T. Clark. Obviously, it does not look good right now. But at this moment, I am not yet ready to shovel dirt on the Houston Rockets. Not after what I saw in the first 2 games, in which Portland's best player was shockingly hot and Houston's best player was shockingly cold. And I'm going to suggest that could reverse itself in Game 3 in Portland. It had better reverse itself, or this will be over if they go down 3-0, obviously. I want to keep this in perspective. LaMarcus Aldridge, by the way, from Dallas, Texas, averaged for this season 23.2 points per game. In Game 1, he scored 46 at Houston, and last night he scored 43 at Houston. Is it a Texas thing? I don't know what gets into him, but last night, the Rockets actually did a good job of pushing him outside the paint. He scored 24 of the 46 in the paint in Game 1. Last night he only scored 10 in the paint. But what did he do? He made 13 of 19 mid-range jump shots. You play a little hoops, that's pretty crazy hot stuff.
Oh, no, that's tough.
Okay? That's like you say on the playground, that's too good. Too good. Okay, so I saw in the second half, Houston did run a second defender at LaMarcus Aldridge. And most of the time, the second defender didn't get there before he rose up over Ashik and drained another one. And I mean, they were sweet. They were nothing but net shots. He's shooting that high arcing jumper, and it looks like every time it leaves his hand, he thinks it's going in. I got to the point I was surprised when the ball didn't go in the hole. Now, meanwhile, my man James Harden, who I have lauded on this show as being the best closer in basketball, in the 2 games combined went 14 for 47. That's 29.8%. Obviously, that's way too many empty trips for the guy who runs the show for the Houston Rockets. And I can't tell you last night how disappointed I was in James Harden. They're going to go as he goes, and he went south in both games late. Last night, Dwight, I don't know if you got to stay up and watch all this. Unfortunately, I did. Which is why I'm reeling here. But the point was, late in that game, 35 seconds left, Dwight Howard shocked me by making 2 clutch free throws. It cut the lead to 4. And Portland inbounds the ball and goes right down the floor, and nobody guarded Wes Matthews. He got a little bunny layup. I'm not sure about this, and I couldn't find it in the game stories. I think it was James Harden's man. And James was so frustrated on the ensuing inbounds pass that he threw down Wesley Matthews, and it was an obvious offensive foul, frustration foul, and that was basically the end of the game. It switched right there. So my point is, do you really think that James Harden will play that poorly in Game 3? I do not. Do you think that LaMarcus will he make 13 and 19 in Game 3? I'm sorry, I do not. So I'm going to sit here and say I still give the Rockets a shot to win Game 3 in Portland.
I think it's about how you look at it. Do I think they can win Game 3? I do. I think they can make a series out of it. But with Portland going up 2-0, I feel like Portland's going to win the series.
Okay.
If you look at the game we talked about last night, is LaMarcus Aldridge going to average 44.5 points for the rest of this series? I've never seen it done. If he does,
it'll be a sweep.
That's going to be special.
Sure.
And also last night they pushed him away from the goal. He was shooting these high arcing rainbows that were falling. But if you watch late in the game when he was taking some of those difficult shots, he began to miss.
He missed a few.
Yeah, he missed a few of them. And you also look down the stretch, James Harden hits a big three.
He did hit one
He hit a big three. He also has a good drive. But then he comes down, he turns the ball over, and inexplicably, I don't know if he's just disinterested in the game when Wesley Matthews gets a layup, which maybe he probably shouldn't have shot. Maybe he could have pulled the ball out.
Oh, just to run the time.
And just run some more time.
I know, but it was such a psychological killer because you cut it to 4 from 6, and then you just give him a right back. You just give him the 2 with 30 seconds left. I agree. I would have gone ahead and shot the shot. But
looking at it, I feel like Houston can go in and win a game in Portland, but they won't win both. It's a tough place to play. They play extremely well there. And if you look, also last night, Lillard didn't have an amazing game. No. Game 1, he played extremely well, went for 31 points, and that was a big reason why they were able to come back.
Yep.
But right now, Houston doesn't have an identity. When you play the way they play during the regular season, you jack up three-pointers, you're kind of run and gun. Games slow down in the playoffs. Fouls are called differently in the playoffs. And so now you're looking at Dwight Howard. He's saying, I want the ball. And in the first quarter, he gives you 19 points.
He did.
But down the stretch, sometimes you're going to be scared to go to him. Even though last night he made 2 big free throws. I think he was 5 for 6 for the game. So he did what he had to do. You're not going to expect that from him every night. And he's also, to me, not a guy you can go to game after game in the post to get you big buckets. They need to get Harden. I feel like you need to get Harden and Parsons established earlier in the game and let Dwight get his plays off a hustle, off a rebound, things like that.
Thank you for saying that. You used the word identity. I'm going to put another word after it. Crisis. Identity crisis they're facing. Dwight demanded the ball on the off day. Give me more touches. So in the first half, he gets 17 shots up. As you point out, he made 11 in the first half. 11 out of 17. What was the halftime score? It was tied. So again, you say, okay, Dwight, if we're going to give you the ball, does that mean we'll be up 15 at halftime? No, it did not, because the identity of this basketball team all year was they put up the most three-point shots in the NBA. They put up 35 in Game 1, and they had shots late. My guy James Harden had shots late in both regulation and overtime to win Game 1. What happened last night? Because they were so Dwight conscious, through 3 quarters last night, they only put up 9 three-pointers. They wound up with 16 for the game. They went 3 for 16 on three-point shots. In Game 1, they made 8 out of 35. So they are now shooting 22% from 3. Well, they live and die, man. I mean, we're going to talk about my Spurs. They're the same live and die on the 3, but so do these guys. Well, last night they didn't even put up that many only 16 threes. Really?
If that's who you are, though, if you live and die by the 3, I feel like that's the way you have to play. You can't change the game because one guy says, you know what, I need the ball. This is what's got us here throughout the year. Let's continue doing it. And if we lose, let's lose being us.
Right. I agree.
Game 3, Rockets at Blazers, Friday, 10:30 Eastern. Let's go to the Eastern Conference, gentlemen. With less than 50 seconds to go in Miami's win over the Bobcats, LeBron James took a right elbow from Josh McRoberts. James lost the ball, fell to the floor, and held his throat for a few seconds. The officials ruled it a common, not flagrant. James made 1 of 2 free throws. McRoberts says it wasn't intentional. He was just caught up in the air with LeBron. All season long, Miami Heat has complained.
My reaction was trying to catch my breath. Obviously, just stay down on the floor and try to catch my breath before I went up to the free throw line. I had no idea what the call was. I knew it was a foul, but I didn't know if it was going to be a flagrant or not. I haven't seen it again. I don't need to see it again. The most important thing is we win the game.
I haven't seen the replay, but he takes a lot of those hits. Whether it's a basketball play, making a play on the ball or not, I'm curious to see.
All right, just a comment. Here's the question. Do you have a problem with McRoberts' foul? Ryan T. Clark, it's for you.
This is such a hard question to answer after you watch the Bad Boys 30 for 30 last week.
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you.
It's a really hard question to
answer. I know that was a little before your time, but still.
Well, I was a huge Michael Jordan fan. So my dad was a big Pistons fan, so he would run around the house singing Bad Boys every time they beat him, and I'd cry. So when they walked off, when they got swept and walked off the court, it's one of the greatest days of my life. But looking at the way the game was played then to now, it just seems like playoff basketball. This is what playoff basketball would look like, but that's not today's NBA. And I can be honest, I'm critical of LeBron for flopping and different things, because I think he's so physically imposing. I don't want to see him impose his will on people, take the ball to the basket, get those fouls, and be strong. But look at the Roy Hibbert play earlier this year, which you called a flagrant foul on LeBron. I don't see much difference in the two plays. And you think about when Shaq was in the NBA, he would take a lot of hard fouls because he was a physically imposing player. They feel like he could take more, dish out more punishment. Also, Dwight Howard, early in his career, would take a lot of beatings because of how physically imposing he was compared to the other players on the court. And I feel like right now, LeBron is getting the same thing. Does he get fouls called superstar style sometimes? He does. But this foul, I feel like it should have been a flagrant in today's NBA.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. The spirit of your message is point taken. But the difference in the Hibbert play was LeBron hit him with an elbow in the jaw and just about cold-cocked, knocked him out. I mean, Hibbert couldn't even get up. He was wobbling just to stand up. This was below the head, so it wasn't a face shot. This was, I don't know if we could call it either upper chest or low throat. It was somewhere in that region right there.
Oh.
Okay, and here's my point, and I brought up many times on this show. LeBron didn't shoot that many free throws. There were some games when he went several games in a row where he didn't shoot a free throw. And I'd say, wow, this league has turned on LeBron. Those officials have turned on LeBron. Why? Because you brought it up. He flops a lot. And when he does take somebody to the hole and dunks on him, he showboats a lot. You get a lot of flexing. You get a lot of posing, staring into the crowd with the big nod, And other teams don't like it. I don't think the referees like it. So I remind you, the last time Charlotte played a regular season game in that building, LeBron scorched them for 61 points. I loved what Josh McRoberts did. It was close. I wouldn't have called it, but I'm more in the realm of, okay, let's just protect the head, the face, So I thought it was, so to speak, below the belt in a good way enough, below the line, that I would have let it go. Josh McRoberts did exactly what he should have done. He came over to help, and he made sure that LeBron didn't and one him. Am I right? He made sure that he had to go shoot 2 free throws. And LeBron was still so shook up that he did miss the first one. To his credit, he made the next one, and then he came back a few seconds later and made 2 huge ones. God bless you for that, because those were game winners, basically. So the point was, Josh McRoberts momentarily saved the game with that foul for Charlotte. It kept them afloat enough that Kemba was able to go down. First, LeBron had a big turnover, but then Kemba went down and hit a 3, and all of a sudden you're thinking, wow, Charlotte has a shot here, and then they couldn't even get a shot up when D. Wade played defense on Gary Neal. I thought Gary Neal should have just gone up and shot it anyway, tried to get the cheap foul or just get the ball up, and he obviously gives it to Chris Douglas Robertson in the corner, and there's no hope, no shot. So my point is that LeBron does ask for this occasionally. I don't think he gets protected at all by the refs for the most part. But, again, I've just been taught this is the line, right? The magic line, above or below.
Well, if Roger Goodell is the commissioner of the NBA, that's a flagrant. Because we say protect the head and neck area. Okay. Because it's a little different. But he didn't make a play on the ball. As far as basketball goes, I love the play. I feel like you're supposed to have an enforcer inside. You're supposed to protect the rim. And when you're playing a guy like LeBron, you can't protect the rim by out-jumping him, by having more athleticism than he has. You have to find a physical way to impose your will on him. So I like the play from that standpoint. But it does send, I think, a bad message that it is LeBron. It is the best player in the game. And is it because he's flexing or because you feel like he showboats a little bit or he begs for calls and he's flopping? That shouldn't play into the psyche of a referee when making these decisions. It definitely does. It definitely does, but I think it sends a bad precedent now. If LeBron comes out next game and retaliates in some way, I feel like they will call a flagrant on that, expecting him to do something in retaliation to what McRoberts did. So I think you start walking down a slippery slope when you don't give this a flagrant call.
Now, just to sum this up, I'm always tough on LeBron when he pulls up and jacks up threes in this kind of situation, even though this wasn't the last shot of the game. Still 50 seconds to go. To his credit, he went for the kill, man. He was going to dunk on somebody if you didn't get in his way, and Josh McRoberts got in his way. Not a big deal, close call, but I wouldn't have called it, and the bad boys wouldn't have called it, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
Around the house, bad boys. Bobcats have yet to win a playoff game in franchise history. They'll try to do so on Saturday when that Game 3 takes place. Welcome back. We're having side conversations. Mel A. Kuiper Jr. is joining us. We're just doing middle initials for everyone here. Thank you for talking with us and joining us. You're back again for some fun.
Hey, I'll take Mel A. over Stephen A. any day.
Come
on.
Oh, boy.
Come on.
Because you know he's watching.
Yeah.
That's not true. So
trying to get him back.
I know, right, on the show.
Yeah.
Let's talk about 4.0, your mock draft. You had some of these quarterbacks we haven't discussed yet dropping, one specifically, Teddy Bridgewater. In an earlier version, he was 5th going to Oakland. Now he's dropped 28 spots. Why is that?
If you don't put a quarterback at 8 in a mock projection, Kerry, you're dropping him into no man's land. Nobody really needs a quarterback. Will Tennessee take one with Ken Wisenhunt when they have Jake Locker for this year to get him going and keep him healthy? I don't think so. 20 Arizona, maybe they could take a quarterback, but it may not be Bridgewater. 26 Cleveland could if they don't take one at 4. I mean, with Bridgewater's pro day, it made people that liked him go back and say, okay, do we see something here, a red flag, and can we apply that to what happened on the field? And in some games you could. Inaccuracy, lack of great arm strength, doesn't have the physically imposing frame. So that pro day, that D- pro day, when you should get at a B+, A+, really put people in a bad spot that liked him. The ones that didn't said, boy, this verifies what we knew. The ones that did like him went back to the drawing board and said, boy, there are some red flags that came up there that we can apply to the field and see on the field. That's why I have him going in the second round.
I just feel like this whole draft process, it bothers me. Maybe because I was the first pick of the 8th round. When they didn't have 8 rounds. But so Teddy Bridgewater, after watching the film, after seeing him play against Florida in the Sugar Bowl in his sophomore year, people were expecting him to go high based off the film.
Right.
Don't we evaluate the film? Isn't it what the guy does on the field? So because of a bad pro day, or a pro day that I went to LSU. Jamarcus Russell had one of the most amazing pro days ever because he had a strong arm, because he was accurate, because he was a big guy. He fit the mold. He looked the part. Why just because of a pro day now are we dropping him? What you had him dropping, 28 spots? What happens? Why doesn't the film matter as much anymore?
Well, keep in mind, Ryan, the 8th pick is Minnesota. After 8, you can't put him anywhere except the first pick in the second round. Just because those teams aren't taking a quarterback, and I can't project a trade in a mock first-round projection. Go back to Bridgewater. You said the Florida game. That's why I had him number 2 to Clowney going into the year. That Florida game was a defining moment for him. They were 2-touchdown underdog. They routed Florida. He played great. Name me a defining moment this year. They didn't play anybody. That's not his fault. They played nobody. And that completion percentage, the touchdown-interception ratio skewed a bit by that. When you went back to the games, there were some inaccurate throws, some arm strength issues. He doesn't have that big frame. And then you think about the intangibles, the wow factor. Did he have it? No. So he drops. Somebody else moves up. Who's the guy moving up? Derek Carr from Fresno State.
Ryan, you can only lose your pro day as a quarterback. You can only lose it, and he lost it because he looked nervous at his pro day.
Well, why did he look nervous? Because he struggled from the get-go, and he didn't have the gloves that he wore during the season. Mentally, think about it. That pressure of pro day, when you know you should get an A, and you start out, it's like you pick up that test, the first couple questions you don't have the answer to. You start to say, ooh, something's going awry here. I'm not going to get that A any longer. Now I'm already down to a B. Now you press a little bit. Then you get a little nervous. You're thinking too much. Mechanics, it's not.
Start aiming.
Exactly.
Start aiming the ball.
And then all of a sudden the wheels are coming off. The wheels are coming off.
He was throwing some ducks. He was throwing some balls.
I mean,
he was having a hard time throwing a spiral at his pro day.
And how's that? How are you going to overlook that? I mean, you put yourself in a GM's shoes and say, okay, I'm watching this. I'm going to make him the 5th pick, 4th pick, 3rd pick in the draft. And I'm just watching a kid not be able to make throws accurately, not showing great arm strength. And I go back and I see some things in games that bother me a little bit. That's why. And then, like I say, when you get past 8, find me a team that needs a quarterback. Until you get, now you can say Cleveland at 26, but they pick at 4. They may take that quarterback at 4. That's why you say, how'd he drop? If I asked all of you guys to do a mock first and you didn't have him going at 8, where are you going to put him?
Okay, just for the record, I never had him that high to begin with. We did that topic, I don't know, 4 or 5 times during the year. Stephen A. and I did. And I kept saying, I'm not sold. Now, I'm just watching TV, and I did not watch much of him the year before. But from what I saw this year versus the competition that you bring up, or lack thereof, it was shaky to me. I did like his poise. I did not like his arm strength, and I didn't love his accuracy. So what... I was surprised that you guys had him quite so high to start with.
Same competition as Blake Bortles, though. Like, we had to keep
we're
that
about
in
to
mind.
talk about that.
Right, keep in mind, Bortles beat Baylor as a 17-point underdog. He beat Louisville. He beat Penn State at Happy Valley as a 5.5-point underdog. He had some defining moments. Now, he had a bad first half against Baylor, but he righted his ship about the 10-minute mark of the third quarter, played great the rest of the way. He's probably going to go in the top 8. To go back to Bridgewater, all the things you're saying, Skip and Ron, we've heard it. Aaron Rodgers was projected to be the #1 pick by a lot of people 2 to 3 weeks before that draft. He dropped into the 20s. Alex Smith went #1. Questions about, he throws nothing but short passes. Can't get the ball down the field. Product of Jeff Tedford's offense. All these things about Aaron Rodgers. That's why he dropped, and look what happened.
Okay, but you did a great piece when he went to Green Bay. They had to reinvent him over about a 3-year wait period, right? 4 years.
Oh, yeah. They thought during the summer school session when he was getting his mechanics tweaked by Tom Clements and others. They worked with him. And you cannot even compare what Rodgers was throwing the ball. You wouldn't even recognize Rodgers from his final year at Cal to what he was with the Packers early on, how they changed his mechanics dramatically.
Can happen. Okay, it could happen to any of these kids.
Well, keep in mind as well, arm strength can improve. Peyton Manning's arm got better. Tom Brady's, Drew Brees', a host of quarterbacks' arm strength, which I never thought 30 years ago could happen. They have improved their arm strength once they got in the league. And I'll tell you what, Bortles' arm needs to improve. Bridgewater's needs to improve. Manziel's fine. Carr's fine. McCarron's needs to improve. There's a lot of quarterbacks that are in that. Garoppolo's needs to improve. So it's not just Bridgewater we're talking about in that area.
Speaking of Derek Carr, huge arm, big arm talent. Why are you so high on him now? You have him at 20 in your
20 to
Arizona. Why are you so high compared to Todd McShay, who does not have him going in the first 2 rounds?
Todd has him in the 4th round.
Fourth round.
So Todd doesn't want any parts of Derek Carr, is what he's saying. Which is what you heard Merrill Hodge and Shaw say about Johnny Manziel. Well, I moved him from the 4th to the 3rd round. That tells you don't want Johnny Manziel. Todd's saying, I don't want Derek Carr. He's not my quarterback. Carr is going in the 1st round. He could go as high as 8 to Minnesota, as low as 20 to Arizona. He's got the big arm. He's the guy that, for the end of the year to now, has nailed the process. He's a great character kid. He's got the quick release. He's got the big arm. He's got everything you look for physically in a quarterback. That's why, despite the USC game, despite not playing great against Utah State, having an easy schedule that he benefited from, he's still going to go in the 1st round. And Bridgewater's stock is dropping. His is rising because the last 3 months he did everything right, and Bridgewater's pro day went awry.
Okay, the people I trust around the league. Now, I have not watched Derek Carr. I didn't even watch the 2 bowl games. So I'm speaking from what I hear.
Right.
The people I trust did not love him in those 2 bowl games, especially the USC game, because he flinched a lot in the pocket. When the pressure started to heat up, he started to duck for cover quickly. Have you heard that, or do you put that in your equation?
Looking down the gun barrel. And that's where, again, when you dealt with that USC defense, the Utah State, the bowl game, the previous, there were issues. But that was a long time ago. That's years ago when you think about what happened in December, January. Now, all of a sudden, we're in May. We're going to be coming up to May, a May draft. That allows you to recover. And remember, coaches weren't involved in that. Now coaches are seeing you at the combine, pro days, bringing you in for a private workout. Now the coaches are involved. They don't really care. It's one game. Now they say, okay, this kid looks the part. Who looks the part? Who throws the ball? Who's got the big arm?
Now, his brother looked the part, too, but he was in a tough spot.
Well, his brother went #1. His brother's organization, the Houston Texans, didn't do enough to help their quarterback. John Gruden and I were talking about that, how Ray Lewis, and Ray was with us the other day down in Tampa, and Ray said, hey, think about Ray Lewis, great player. They made sure that they had Saragusa, Sam Adams, went out and got Haloti Ngata to protect him from dealing with, so he could be freed up now with guys blocking him and on him. That's what Houston didn't do. Help Carr. They drafted Mario Williams, good player, but they didn't get Reggie Bush, which would have been a great piece down there, a fear factor player that opens up opportunities for other guys. Passed on him to take Mario Williams. Good, but what about David Carr? Are we helping him? Remember early on, he showed promise. He didn't look like a bust.
They didn't block for him either.
No.
If we remember back, he was sacked constantly. I have a question.
And by the way, too, I mean, this whole David Carr effect, Derek Carr. I mean, you think about brothers. All the second brother, first brother, always didn't turn out to be like Eli and Peyton.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's not always because one brother is great, the other brother, well, you know, he's going to be hurt because this one was not as good, and he's coming along. For me, David Carr, Derek Carr, that's unfair to Derek Carr. If you're going to say because David Carr wasn't the great quarterback, a number one pick should be, we're not going to be interested in Derek Carr. I don't think that makes any sense to me.
Okay. Where's your question? Ryan?
Does Bridgewater falling have anything to do with Derek Carr rising in your mind? Or teams that are looking for a quarterback saying they have to pass on Bridgewater? Does that make Derek Carr move up?
I don't think so, Ryan, because you're looking at individuals. And if you don't like any of these quarterbacks, you don't take them. That's when people say to me about these mocks, well, we don't know who these teams are taking. We're just speculating. Nobody knows for sure. I think Clowney goes number one. I think that he doesn't. He's going to go to somebody else. After Clowney, all bets are off. But in terms of the quarterbacks, it's individual preference. They may like Tom Savage from Pittsburgh because he's got the big arm and he can spin it. And he's hot right now. Maybe Tom Savage in the second round is more attractive than Bridgewater, Manziel, Bortles, or Carr in the first round. So they say, okay, we can get Tom Savage in the second.
Yep.
Hey, San Francisco got Kaepernick. Seattle got Wilson. We don't need to use this first-round pick on a quarterback. We can get somebody. So that's the feeling if you pass on those three to get the other guy. McCarron, some people really like from Alabama. Some people like Savage. Some like Garoppolo. There's the other group of quarterbacks. Some even think Logan Thomas in the third round with his physicality, can develop into a quarterback because he has the work ethic. So maybe in the third round we like Logan Thomas from Virginia Tech. Zach Mettenberger's hot right now with that big arm. Maybe they like Mettenberger in a second. I think he's overrated, but some like him.
LSU.
It's our guy.
So, is it fair to say, since Blake Bortles was at moments projected to go number one to the Texans, that there's been a little cooling on Blake Bortles?
Well, Todd had him going number one. I think I didn't at that point. Todd's been a little higher during the process, a little higher than on Bortles and I didn't like ball placement with Bortles. Arm strength with Bortles when you watch him is just average. Hopefully it will improve. I love his pocket awareness. Love the fact he will look down that gun barrel and he will slip inside in the pocket. He is really good at that. He did a great job in those games leading his team to victories when people thought maybe they wouldn't win. They were underdog. Do I think he should go 8th to Minnesota? Yeah, I would say that's a perfect spot for him.
Okay, can I say for Ryan Clark's sake, the comparisons of Bortles to Roethlisberger, completely unfair to Roethlisberger. Maybe size comparisons, but arm listen, you know as well as anybody, Ben can flat out throw the football. He can make every throw any way you want to make it. Sidearm over.
He's got Aikman-like accuracy. Bortles does not, and Bortles doesn't have that kind of arm. Now, he can move around like Roethlisberger, and he can run better, I think, than Ben. But, no, the pure passing of Ben Roethlisberger has always been vastly underrated.
Vastly. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, he can definitely throw the ball. I mean, I think Mike Wallace found that out this year
he
going
did.
to Miami.
Yeah, well said.
Mel A. Kiper Jr. Always a
What's
pleasure.
the A stand for?
I don't know. You tell me.
Any guesses?
Anthony.
Oh, jinx!
What?
Anthony is what we said.
Allen?
Alfred.
Antonio.
Antonio. What is it?
Adam.
Adam.
Sorry.
All right.
Is it Melvin? Melvin?
It used to be, but I changed it to Mel. I didn't like it.
All right.
Never call me that.
Mel
I won't.
Kiper Jr. The Spurs lose Game 2 at home against the Mavs, 113-92. It was the Mavs' first win in the last 11 games against the Spurs. It was the Spurs' largest playoff loss since 2010. They had 24 turnovers, a playoff high since 2007, due in large part to the Mavs' aggressive defense. Back out on camera, our friend, our compatriot, our buddy watching the show. I shall return tomorrow to be with my boys, Real Skip Bayless and Ryan Rucco. It's killing me not to be on after the games I saw. Skip Bayless, it's killing him.
Then why aren't you here? You should have sucked it up and been here. It's killing you. You should have been right there.
Maybe the illness could have been killing him too, though.
Well, I hope
He
not.
didn't want to spread it to you guys.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. He was saving us.
He was being a good teammate.
Yeah, he said he didn't want to get you sick because he loves you.
Yeah.
All right, here's the question. We're talking about Skip Spurs. On a scale of 1 to 10, dear sir, how concerned are you about your Spurs?
I must admit, it made me sick at my stomach watching what I had to watch for 4 quarters last night. I am at a 5 on the concern scale right now. I did predict, sitting in the seat yesterday, you remember, that my Spurs would lose at home last night to arch-rival Dallas. I did not expect to have to sit and watch my Spurs stink it up. I called it would be a late, close loss. I had no idea they would stink it up about as badly as any playoff loss I can ever remember in all my time watching my Spurs. They might have had some worse numbers losses, but as far as how poorly they played, the 24 turnovers, just how ugly of an eyesore of a basketball game it was, I can't remember one. Maybe I'm overreacting, but I cannot remember. So, here's my bottom line today. I believe that pretty soon we're going to look back on what happened last night, and we're going to say, aha, that was the turning point game for the 2014 San Antonio Spurs. They're either going to go south, as in number 1 seed loses to 8 seed in first round, or they are going to launch themselves forward. I picked them to win it all, and maybe that's exactly what they needed last night to refocus themselves, because they were on cruise control with 75 games missed by starters through the regular season, and they won the regular season by 3 games and had the best road record by 5 games, which is why I am not writing them off to win a game or 2 in Dallas. I've always said on this show, for reasons I can't explain, they unify, pull together, and play a little better away from that home than at that home. I never really trust them at home. So last night, it was a complete setup. Coach Popovich gets his Coach of the Year award before the game, and it felt like they were getting the trophy. It did. It did. It really felt like, you know, the players are out there, and everybody's there, and R.C. Buford, the GM's out there, and they're shaking hands with the owner. It's like, congratulations, we won it all. No, you didn't. And Rick Carlisle, the Mavericks coach, is playing it for all it's worth. He proclaimed Pop the greatest coach of the century last night because he's just rubbing it in. I'm mismatched. I can't coach with this man. I'm complete, you know, I've got 2 boulders on my shoulder trying to coach. No, you do not, because you have a pretty talented veteran basketball team that despises everything San Antonio. So what's my concern, Ryan Clark? That in 2 games against these Mavericks, my Spurs cannot score. They just cannot score. I don't get it. I got my theories. I'll tell you in just a second. But last night, they couldn't keep Dallas from scoring. 56 in the first half and 113 total. Now, remember, it is very difficult to beat any team, especially a rival, 11 straight games. So by law of average, Dallas finally said, that's enough. We're sick of this stuff. Really? I mean, lose 10 straight to your arch rival? So it seemed like every shot in the second half, they just closed their eyes, you know, and Calderon's making jump shots with his eyes closed. And I'm saying, okay, this is really ugly. This is really messy. But my biggest concern is I've proclaimed Kawhi Leonard the best all-around San Antonio Spur. And if you say they're too old, he's 21 years of age. I don't know where he is. I think he got sent to the D-League. I'm not sure. I don't know what happened to him.
Disappeared.
He's just completely disappeared because, again, they have a hard time getting him to shoot enough. But when Tony Parker is going to dribble 10,000 times in the first quarter of both Dallas games, Kawhi just loses interest. I think he wants to just go sit in the 3rd row and watch Tony dribble.
10,000.
10,000, seriously. Because that's their offense in the first quarter is dribble, 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 pick, dribble, 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 dribble. And I'm sick of it because not until the shock troops come in, Manu, Bellinelli, Patty Mills, do they actually start to do what people say they do, share the basketball. Okay, so am I concerned? I'm at a 5. Do I think they can right the ship and use it as a launch? But this is it, you know? Yeah, here they go. Yes, I do.
I'm at a 1.
Really? Thank you.
I'm at a 1 for the San Antonio Spurs.
If I were closer, I'd hug you here.
You know, I'm feeling like Carlisle. You see what he said? He said it's a monumental task. We're doing things that we don't normally do because they're such a potent team. And it's true. I think the Spurs were kind of just going through the motions, though, because of what you said during the regular season. I mean, you go on a double-digit game winning streak to get the best record in the NBA when you have starters hurt, when you can rest guys. So you feel like, you know what, we have this thing on cruise control. We've beaten this team, what was it, 11 times in a row. You know, and they finally break the streak. Dallas was playing for something. When you look at a Spurs team that turns the ball over 24 times and also only creates 7 turnovers, that's what tells me you're not into the game. Because you get into the game in the playoffs defensively. When you're locked in defensively, especially a great Popovich team, when you're locked in defensively, that's when the San Antonio Spurs are playing good basketball. And also with them, they don't have the the bright, young, athletic star that some of these other teams have.
Now,
So they have
Kawhi could be that kid. You know, he could be.
But when Tony Parker pounds the ball
I know.
constantly and then dribbles into the lane and
Yep.
doesn't have a layup, so he
But he
dribbles
dribbles
back
all the
out
way
to the
back
top,
out. Yep.
you know, that's not getting those guys into the game. And for me, I didn't recognize it till last year, actually going to a game and watching these guys play and saying to myself, you know what? Nobody on this team is really super athletic. So they have to play well. You can't turn the ball over 24 times.
You cannot.
You have to find ways to score. And when you have
agree.
3 guys in double digits,
Yep.
and what Tim Duncan has 11, Tony
Yep.
Parker has 12,
Yep.
Manu finally comes out and has an extremely good night.
Yep.
You're not going to win games like that. I think Pop's going to get on him. Obviously,
Yep.
he's going to get him playing good basketball. And Dallas may not win another game in this series.
Really? Says Ryan Clark.
Yeah,
Ryan T. He's on the
Ryan
record.
T. is on it.
Wow.
We'll
Are
play
you
that
trying
back.
to jinx my Spurs? Is that possible?
No.
Never.
Well, bottom line, do you realize that Manu Ginobili last night made 9 out of 12 shots and 5 out of 6 threes, and they lost by 20? What if he had had the same off night? This would have been a 40-point loss like Golden State had at the Clippers, right?
Yep.
Except this was at home in San Antonio with the league's best record coming out of the regular season. So, bottom line, they all got to flip big switches because Dallas is a huge threat to this team. Because Dirk, you know, he's still going to make shots. And all of a sudden when you get Marion going and you get a little Vince going, you get Calderon going, they're scary. But my Spurs have beaten them 10 straight times.
We're going. Mavs don't get another game, right?
No.
Okay. Ryan T. Clark.
Thank you.
The NFL has unveiled their 2014 regular season schedule last night, and it appears Andrew Luck and the Colts may have actually lucked out, all pun intended, with the easiest schedule this season. Only 4 of their 16 opponents made the playoffs last year. So we asked this question: how much pressure does having an easy schedule put on Andrew Luck?
The easiest schedule.
The
right?
easiest. You agree with that, Ryan?
At this
That's the
moment.
easiest schedule?
Uh-huh.
At this
Based
moment,
off of last
that
year's,
changes, you know, as teams get
standings,
better.
yeah.
Sure. I think there is huge pressure on Andrew Luck. I'm going to be the first to admit there's some personal pride involved here because before Andrew Luck's draft, I was all about your new teammate, Robert Griffin III. And I said he would end up being a little better. Not that Andrew Luck was anywhere near a bust, but that RG3 would end up being a little bit better. He was, as a rookie. He put up a little better numbers than Andrew Luck, who, by the way, as a rookie, finished second to Mr. Butt Fumble in NFL turnovers to Mark Sanchez.
Right.
Okay, so just for the record, it was his rookie year, second most total turnovers to Mark Sanchez. Okay, so again, I'm not rooting against him, but maybe I'm being a little, maybe hypercritical, maybe overly critical. But last year in the playoffs, in 2 playoff games, Andrew Luck totaled 7 interceptions. He threw, as you remember, 3 against Kansas City at home, and the third one put them in the 38-10 hole that they somehow climbed back out of, thanks in large part to Andrew Luck, and they won that game 45-44. At New England, it was just a nightmare, a second nightmare at New England, counting a regular season game that Andrew Luck had to play there. Obviously, a lot of quarterbacks end up with a nightmare against Bill Belichick in that stadium.
Yep.
But 4 interceptions was not pretty. And I'm putting this in the context because our friend Mel or Todd, I continue to hear this will be the best quarterback since John Elway. He was projected that way before his draft. So, wow, 7 interceptions in 2 playoff games. And now you're telling me easiest schedule in the NFL? Okay, show me. Okay? And I know I won't preempt you. I know where you're going to go with this, so I'll just give it to you.
First off, the schedules. Let's look at it right now, looking at the schedules in April. Last year in April, if you had the Houston Texans on your schedule, you would think to yourself,
Right.
I'm going to have to be ready to play.
That's a fact.
I'm going to have to be ready to play football.
Yep.
And then after about week 3, everybody in the NFL was able to beat the Houston Texans. So it does say a lot when you look at what the teams did the previous year.
Yep.
But I don't know if it heaps more pressure on Andrew Luck than he would already have. I mean, when they give you that praise, the best quarterback prospect I've evaluated since John Elway, those were the type of sentences and words you heard and sentiments when he was coming out of Stanford. And so for him, the pressure's already been there. But I feel like he's produced under the immense pressure he's been under. I mean, last year, you look at the coach team, you lose Reggie Wayne, who was his go-to guy. It was his #1 receiver, a guy he could lean on when I needed to get a pass out. He went out with a group of individuals at wide receiver that we didn't even know before the season and played well. Now you have Hakeem Nicks.
You do. That's a big pickup for them.
It's a big pickup.
Yeah.
But you also need Trent Richardson has more pressure on him to me than Andrew Luck. Trent Richardson can be in a career-defining year. If he doesn't produce more than below 3 yards a carry as what he's done, as what he did last year.
Good point.
He can be taken out of being a starting running back in the NFL for any team. So I feel like with Andrew Luck, listen, the playoff games, you throw 4 interceptions in New England. Yeah, that's tough. But also, you can't stop LeGarrette Blount from running the football. He's a guy who killed you because you didn't stop the run. So you go out and get DeQuell Jackson, who's a tackling machine, hoping you can shore that up. You get Hakeem Nicks. You have Reggie Wayne. I feel like he's going to be a better football player this year than he was last year. But there's no more pressure on him. I feel like he's produced in the way that they thought he would.
Okay, and to your point, I believe, if memory serves, Carolina had what was projected as the easiest schedule 1 year ago right now. And I think their schedule ended up the 14th toughest at the end of the year, given win-loss records.
Right.
So it always turns around. But I'm saying going into game 1, they will have
the easiest schedule. Okay.
And it won't start changing until game 1.
You start off with Denver
at
Sunday
Denver.
night. At Denver.
Yeah.
That's a huge game. Obviously, Peyton Manning getting an opportunity to get the coach.
Andrew Luck outplayed Peyton back in his stomping grounds in Indy last year.
When you look at Coach last year, they beat San Fran.
They had some big
They
wins.
beat Seattle
at home.
They beat Seattle pretty handily.
They did.
By passing the ball. And you beat Denver. So they're a team that had some very good wins and very good games last year.
They also had some very perplexing losses. And I'm not going to beat the dead horse, or the dead colt in this case. But,
the dead colt.
But the game at San Diego on Monday Night Football, he was just ordinary in that game. And I was like, really? That's John Elway Jr.? I don't know about that.
You're not believing that?
I'm not buying it.
Well, John Elway didn't get his to 37 and 38.
He did not.
Let's talk about tough schedules, shall we? The Denver Broncos may have a tough road to the playoffs. Denver's first 3 games of the season are against playoff teams from a year ago, including a trip to Seattle for a Super Bowl rematch. Definitely must-see TV. The Broncos also have a late-season stretch of 6 road games in 8 weeks. Now, look at the schedule. Digest it, folks at home. The question is for Ryan T. Clark. What do you expect from the Broncos this season?
I expect another playoff season for the Denver Broncos. Peyton Manning, we know what type of quarterback he is in the regular season. I don't expect that to change this year. Now, they do have a hard schedule because they play the NFC West.
They do.
Which, defensively, you have 4 really good and probably 2 great defensive teams in that division. So that's what makes your schedule hard. Is sometimes you get the right pairing with a good division. So that's going to be tough on them. But at worst, they split those. At worst, they split. I mean, you look at Seattle, you take that as a loss because you can almost grant Seattle 8 wins a year in home games.
You can.
But I feel like, they have enough firepower to beat San Francisco. You also have enough firepower to, to beat the Cardinals, the Rams. Other than the Chargers, I don't really see a team testing them in the AFC West. Kansas City gets off to the hot start last year, and then they finish poor, and also go to Indianapolis, have a game where they should have won up 28 points and lose it. I don't know if they're going to be the team we saw the first 9 games or the team we saw in the second half of the season once Houston and Tom Bahali and those guys get hurt. So I feel like for Denver, the schedule looks tough on paper, obviously, because you play the NFC West, but they're going to be fine. It will have been another 13-3 year, maybe not. 11-5, 12-4 are definitely feasible.
I'm not with you on this one, and I'm not ready to jump to the most dire conclusion here, which would be Broncos miss the playoffs. But I'm leaning in that direction, and I'll tell you why. They could get off to a pretty good quick start, but then I look at the back half of that schedule for Denver, and all of a sudden, starting on November 2nd at New England, by the way, the 4th straight year that the Denver Broncos have been forced to play at New England. It's just computer generated. It's just by...
Sure it is.
Right? Come on. There's no bias here at all. So they start at New England, then they go at Oakland, at St. Louis, and they're in a stretch of 6 out of 8 games are not in Denver. 6 out of 8 games, including the last 2 at San Diego, at Cincinnati. Those are hard, right? So if you get going a little south after the New England game, you could finish badly here. Could you miss the playoffs? I don't know, but I look at the personnel. You know Emmanuel Sanders, and they did. That was a nice pickup. I assume you blessed that move,
I think that's
right?
a good pickup.
Okay, it's a really good pickup. Is he better than Eric Decker? I don't know. Peyton had a pretty good wavelength with Eric. I'm not the biggest Decker fan. I would say Emmanuel's actually, in a vacuum, a little better receiver than Eric Decker. But you still lost the chemistry with Peyton. And then you did lose your running back, your primary running back. You still have Monte Ball, but no Sean's gone. You lost Zane Beatles, who's one of your best, if not your best, offensive lineman. You do get Ryan Clady back, we think, if he's healthy. But then on defense, they had all kinds of little big losses. Champ's gone to New Orleans, obviously. Wesley Woodyard, who I thought was a fine player. And then Sean Phillips, I know he's getting up there in age, but he made a lot of big plays for them. Ayers made some plays. So there are a lot of guys that they had to lose off that defense. I'm not sure on paper they're quite as good as they were a year ago. I'm not sure about that. And we know that the Super Bowl losers have had a little bit of a rocky past. So they didn't just lose the Super Bowl, as Stephen A. likes to say. It was a, what are all his words, beat down.
It was a beat
they
down.
got punked, straight up punked.
Yeah,
you know,
they got punked.
They did.
Well, they did.
They did.
Yeah.
So is there going to be any hangover from that, or will that be their launch point?
Right.
Do I think Peyton will be I do. I see no drop-off. I think he'll be just as good as he was the last 2 years.
Sure.
Will his team be as good around him, and will they get off to quite the hot start, and then can they close in the schedule? I don't know about that.
I don't know. When I think about Peyton Manning in the regular season, I just don't see things affecting him enough to where the team drops off in the manner that would keep those guys out of the playoffs. I remember when we lost to Green Bay, the next year we go 12-4 and we get to the playoffs and we got T-bowed. But you know, we had a very
You didn't get T-bowed.
It was all of us.
Well,
I watched.
I watched. You couldn't play that game.
Right, but so you know, so for me, I just feel like they could come back, be strong.
Yeah.
You had some losses defensively, but you get Talib, you get Ward, you get DeMarcus Ware to try to add some physicality to a defense that you felt like needed it. You still have Demaryius Thomas, you still have Julius Thomas as tight end. Monty Ball is a guy that you were ready to step up.
You were.
And until last year, Noshawn Marino, he had never had a 1,000-yard season. He also had 500 yards receiving, and I think that was in big part due to having Peyton Manning at quarterback. So offensively, they're still going to be able to score points. Defensively, they become more dynamic, and they have a tough schedule, but I still see them as a playoff team.
Okay, so the two big pickups for them. Talib, again, as a Patriots supporter, I finally just gave up on him because he never was there when I needed him most. Okay, and DeMarcus Ware, similar. I'm a Cowboy fan.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times over the last 3 or 4 years, I kept saying, this is DeMarcus game. He's got to take this game over. Where are you, big guy? I don't know where he was. And I think they overpaid for him at this stage in his career. He'll never be able to quite live up to what he was going back to like 2009.
Right.
All right, on the road last year, Broncos were 6-2. Again, you say it's a very different team now on paper.
Coming this summer, the 2014 FIFA World Cup from Brazil. Every goal.
The shot, Jonathan scores! The USA leads by 2!
Every save.
Here's Germany up, steal, closer. In the box, the shot is stopped.
Every match. Wherever you are this summer, take the FIFA World Cup with you. It's on ESPN Radio and the ESPN Radio app.
Yesterday, during a panel at Harvard Business School, Richard Sherman made comments on the double standard he believes exists between race and fighting in sports. Here's the quote. That's the frustrating part, the double standard, the triple standard, the way an athlete is viewed, the way an African-American athlete is viewed in football or basketball, the predominantly African-American sports. Just a brawl. Imagine a brawl happening in football, and imagine the coverage. And that's just in small part what Sherman had to say. Ryan Clark, does he have a point?
He definitely has a point. There's certainly a double standard in the way that race is viewed, not only in sports, but in society as a whole, not only negatively, but also positively. We can take it positive. I don't know how many times I get a compliment, oh, you're so articulate, or you're intelligent, as opposed to what am I not supposed to be? And is it because I'm an athlete, or is it because I'm black? And even when you see a white athlete who speaks well, a white athlete who interviews well, him being articulate or him being smart, those aren't things you point out. Also, we look at the sports, the predominantly black sports, as football and basketball. Whereas, you speak about hockey. fighting is a part of their game.
Yeah.
Fighting is something that's applauded. They have guys who are enforcers. They have guys who, who are legitimately called goons by their coaches and by their teammates who play. And, Thug will never be used with those people. Even if they got in a fight off the ice, you would never use Thug. And I think also what Richard is referring to, the media has been smart enough to camouflage it, I would say, when they speak. But in the world of Twitter now, I don't know how many times you see, guys being called monkeys or being called the N-word or any type of racial slur that people could think of, you hear them. And so I think that makes it more prevalent.
This is from your followers?
Yeah, this is from your followers. Oh, they may not follow you. They may see you on TV and just want to troll you and hunt you out. And so I think you get it more because of that now. You have to hear it more. You have to not necessarily defend yourself, but almost desensitize yourself to it, because if you respond, if you react, it only is going to give them more ammunition to further their notion that you are a thug, further their notion that you don't know how to behave or you don't know how to act in society, because I got upset that you called me the N-word, because I got upset that you demeaned me based on my color. So it's definitely a double standard. It's definitely I think a segregation in society into how African American athletes are viewed. You almost have to make sure, and I know just even in walking around or being in different places or answering questions when you're talking to a white person, you almost like, well, I can't be too demonstrative or too loud because it may be intimidating. They may feel intimidated. And it's just the view of the black athlete. It's the view of the black person as a whole as angry, as volatile, as violent. And so it really is tough sometimes to kind of walk that line in between who you truly are and the way that you'll be perceived.
Okay, so put it in the context of African American players fighting. Right? Is that where you're?
Right. Well, I think
Richard was heading.
Well, I think he was saying, and I don't want to put words into Richard's mouth, but he's saying, okay, he was loud after a game one time.
He was
in an interview, and he was a thug. He was a gangster. He was, such and such from Compton and this and that. So he's saying, imagine me getting in a fist fight. During a game. Imagine that. Imagine how people would view that. Now, obviously, the rules of the game will also be different. But if it was a white lineman, Richie Incognito, and some of the things that I've watched him do on a football field, I would use it. I can actually say I would use a word like thug, because to me, thug doesn't mean gangster. Thug doesn't mean hanging on the block with your pants low. It's the actions that you show that make you a thug. But those words weren't used with him. We got things like the clinical reasons why he was this way. Things that was wrong with him mentally. Had that been a black player, had a black player been behaving like that, just the stuff he was doing on the field, there wouldn't have been all these stories done about him to talk about how he's changed and how he's gotten help and how he's seen psychiatrists and received therapy for that. It'd have been back to his childhood, how he was raised, where he was raised, the type of people he grew up around, his affiliations, and that's just part of what the black athlete deals with, whether it's fighting or just talking or just doing interviews, just being yourself, playing your game. You are under a different type of scrutiny.
Okay, trust me on this. The white neighborhood in which I grew up, which had a really rough side to it, I would have called Richie Incognito a thug, because it would have applied. It would have fit. Okay, back to, now this is one white guy's view of hockey and baseball, which were brought up in this context. To me, and I'm not a big hockey fan, their fights are somewhere, to my eyes, between silly and pathetic. And I cringe every time I happen to be watching hockey and they break out into a regular season fight. Because when the playoffs start, I don't know why, they don't fight anymore, because it's time to win the hockey game, right? So, to me, it is I hate to say it, it's almost a crucial part of the attraction and appeal and draw of that sport that they fight during regular season games, because the fans are expecting some of that. And I hear from hockey fans all the time. I've covered a lot of hockey in my life. The 1980 Miracle on Ice game, I was there. I always hear that they need the outlet. Like during the regular season, it's the only way for those two guys to get it out of their system. Everybody just has to back off the way you might during a practice, especially a preseason practice, like a camp practice, and just let those two guys get it out of their system. Okay, in your case, they usually have helmets on. In this case, they don't.
Right.
And I'm disgusted by it. I have no idea. I don't think it belongs in their sport, but I think they need it to keep people coming to the games, and they have almost like a cult following of hockey fans who they look forward to that. Okay, God bless you. Now let's get to baseball. It is an embarrassment to me when they have brawls that go basically unchecked, because I also think it's a smaller part of the appeal of the game of baseball. It's romanticized. It's a base brawl. The mere fact that managers for over a century have been allowed to run onto the field and scream and yell and stomp and throw things, sometimes not even get thrown out of the game, is an embarrassment to that sport. I don't get it. Can you imagine Mike Tomlin running into the middle of the field because he didn't like a call and throwing up his hands and screaming in the face, go nose to nose with the referee? Do you know what would happen? Do you know how much laundry would fly? They would have to get a truck to come out and pick up all the yellow flags off the field. Am I right?
Yeah.
I mean, you would get multiple 15-yard penalties, and in baseball, it's always 50-50 whether you're even going to get thrown out of the game, because it's part of the lore and romanticism of baseball. Okay? I'm embarrassed by that. So let's keep it in that. Again, I'm looking at it from a white guy context. Now, in your sport, it's pretty hard to fight because you're probably going to end up hurting yourself. Am I right? I mean, you're going to hit face mask, helmet. So I don't see very much. There was that one class, I don't even know if we found this before the show, but there's one, we do have it. This is an Andre Rison, Deion Sanders fight. I believe it was on Monday Night Football.
I was so hype about this, too.
Yeah, look at this. Woo! Throw down. Throw down. Okay, these two guys were friends of each other, and there's a little for show there, just a little bit. But is there bad blood going? Yeah, they went over the edge. But have you ever seen any more punches than that thrown?
That's the most I've seen.
That's the most I've ever seen.
Yes,
okay,
definitely.
So put that in context. I don't know. Again, I'm the wrong guy to ask here, because there's an awful lot of truth to what you say. I would like to think that I don't think that way, but that's just me. So when those two guys fought, because I knew Deion so well, I didn't think twice about it, because Deion had showmanship in him, and I think he enjoyed on that big Monday night stage putting on a little bit of a show, even though he wanted to send a message to Bad Moon Rising that, hey, sorry, you're not going to get away with that on Monday Night Football against
He played in Atlanta before that, too.
He did.
Yeah, so.
You got it.
It's good times.
Yeah,
Squabbles.
I hate to say it sometimes, but I really agree with you with what you say about hockey, and also what you say about baseball, and also football fights in general aren't necessarily beatdowns. There aren't MMA matches. You know, nobody's getting put in guillotines and different things like that. And so I think Richard's trying to use a football fight in just a sense of giving us an example. Like, could you imagine if there was a football fight, or if something went down in football like that with black players, the way that people would be treated? And in you saying, you know, I knew Deion, I knew he had some showmanship. You have enough sense, and you've understood the athlete enough and been around enough black athletes to understand that that doesn't mean he's a thug. That sometimes in sports, you know, your blood boils a little bit, and and you get into it, or there can be bad blood between two different players, and they can be an altercation. But I just think overall, everyone doesn't think the way that you think. You know, and I really want to, and I know I hate going to social media and letting social media, you know, run our lives and run our thoughts. But it is truly one of the few places where people can just say whatever they want.
No accountability.
You know, yeah, like if you wanted to come on here and say somebody was the thug, and you know, you could, but there would be some repercussions and consequences to that. And so I know for Richard, you know, he talked about the different type of tweets he got after he, you know, said what he said about Michael Crabtree. So I do feel that plays a part into kind of what he's saying.
Okay, bottom line from my take over here, I think there's a lot of truth to what Richard said and what Arian Foster said.
Yeah.
And I applaud them for bringing that up, because it needs to be addressed. And I'm happy we could address it.
Welcome back to ESPN First Take, presented by Bass Pro Shops.
Our NFL draft analyst, Todd McShay, released his mock draft 5.0 as opposed to any others, which you can see on ESPN.com right now, folks. The latest mock is based on who Todd would take each pick.
It's Kuiper's fault.
Why is it his fault?
He creates these things. You know, he sits around and creates lists and all these different things. And
Ooh, a shot at Mel. I like it.
Mel A.
Little intramural rivalry here.
Do we have his middle initial yet?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Adam was Kuiper, right?
Yep.
My middle initial's M. It's going to take a while.
Mark.
Nope.
Malachi.
Nope.
No.
Malachi.
I wish. That would be pretty cool.
Martin.
Nope. You're close with the first part.
Wait, I got
Mario.
it. I got it. Manziel.
Perfect.
Marshall.
Marshall.
My grandfather.
Todd Marshall McShay.
Yep.
I like that.
All right, McShay, you got to talk me off my ledge here.
I usually do.
Ed Werder started this yesterday. He reported that Jerry Jones was raving about Johnny Manziel within earshot of one Tony Romo, shaming poor Tony, which leads to, wait a minute, the Cowboys are sitting at 16, which led to you on 6 o'clock Sports Center last night saying, well, I don't think so. But then we see your mock draft today. This is the one where if you're picking
For all 32 teams.
Right. You've got, wait a second, Johnny falling all the way to Cleveland's second pick at 26. Am I right? So, if that happens, if you're right about that, Jerry Jones would have a choice to make because you have the Oregon State receiver going there. Would Jerry Jones take the Oregon State receiver versus Johnny Manziel?
I think they should pass on Johnny Manziel or Teddy Bridgewater or any quarterback at this point. I think the window's running out. You've got your quarterback, and you have needs. You have cornerback needs still. You have secondary needs. You have defensive line needs still. And I think they could add another wide receiver weapon. You know, I really do. I think that they're okay at wide receiver, but I think that they could add another guy and make him. Brandon Cooks could come in and be your number 3 and add an explosive element to that attack. And let's face it, if you're going to win, you're going to win because you've improved on defense and because you're still putting up big numbers in the passing game and on offense. So I wouldn't pull the trigger on Johnny Manziel there. And I'm not saying, just to clarify, I'm not saying Johnny Manziel is going to fall to 26. I don't think that's going to happen. Everyone I talk to in the league says, you know, we think he's going in the top 10. No one in the league can tell you where they actually think he's going to wind up going. It could be a team moving in. We'll have to wait and see. It's just, I personally think all these quarterbacks are a little overrated. I think Blake Bortles, as much as I like him, is not one of the top 7 players in this draft. Now, you get to 8 in Minnesota. And then I think he's in that tier of players, and I could understand why the Vikings, with the great need at quarterback, would wind up going for Bortles, or Manziel even for that matter. But I've got a later first-round grade on Bridgewater and a later first-round grade on Manziel. So in my opinion, personally, and there are some other teams that have that opinion, but there are many other teams that think Manziel belongs in the top 5 or maybe is the best player in this draft. So there's a wide-ranging opinion when it comes to all these quarterbacks, but specifically with Johnny Manziel.
Our own Kerry Champion ran into Jerry Jones back in the summertime in Los Angeles, and he raved about
Johnny Manziel said he would take him if he could.
Okay, so again,
maybe that
Jerry
means he can't though. Like if he could doesn't necessarily mean if he's there.
Right.
I think it means like if I can make this pick and be better from it, I do it. But
he was very adamant. He said Johnny Manziel's the best player in the draft. Very adamant.
If you really believe that,
you got to take him then. If he
and you got to then maybe investigate what it would take to get up to number 9 or 10 if Manziel starts to sit around at that spot.
Maybe.
Because let's look at it. The first 4 players in this draft are the 4 elite players, and they should be the first 4 players taken. Jadeveon Clowney. I'm going to get it right by May 8th, I promise.
Can we just call him Clowney?
Clowney from South Carolina should be the first player taken. And I think Greg Robinson, the offensive tackle from Auburn, Sammy Watkins, wide receiver, and then Khalil Mack, the outside linebacker from Buffalo, are the 4 elite players. Then after that, you've got a couple offensive tackles that you could put at the top of that second tier. I think Jake Matthews from Texas A&M, Michigan's Taylor Lewan. And really to me, those are the 6 premier players in this class. You throw Mike Evans, Johnny Manziel's go-to receiver, into that mix, then you got 7. So if those 7 guys come off the board, then you're sitting at number 8, that's the first quarterback. If they go with Bortles over Johnny Manziel, then there's a strong chance that Johnny Manziel's sitting there at number 9. Now, we know that at number 9, Buffalo is highly unlikely to take a quarterback after taking E.J. Manuel. 10's Detroit. They're not going to take another quarterback with Matthew Stafford. 11 is the next outside shot parachute, and then it goes all the way down to 20 with Arizona, and then 26 with Cleveland. So there's not many quarterback spots once you get past number 8. The question is, who in the top 7 is legitimately going to take Johnny Manziel? There's a lot of stories now coming out that Tampa Bay loves Johnny and is actively looking to maybe move up and go get him. We don't know about Cleveland. We don't know about Jacksonville. So we're close to the draft. We're 2 weeks away, but I feel like I know just as little now as I knew 3 months ago when it comes to where these quarterbacks specifically are going to go.
I do know Jerry Jones, and I believe that at this stage of Jerry's ownership, GM-ship career, he has come to prioritize entertainment, showmanship, even a little more than winning football games. He'll take a moral loss if it was wildly exciting in the end, such as 51-48 loss to Peyton at home when Romo threw the late interception after having one of, you could argue, the best game of Romo's career up to that point.
You really
Jerry
believe
loves
that?
I really believe that. All my heart and all my soul. This is
just for 1 second. Think about that. What does that? How do you feel when you hear that?
Remember, he now is a Washington Redskins, so he has got to put that in that context. But go ahead.
All right, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but knowing that forget owner, your general manager may think that way. That's scary.
That's really tough. I mean, for one, to say it, for one to be vocal.
He basically acknowledged this about 3 weeks ago. Remember that?
Yeah.
So marketing press conference.
So what he's basically saying is, you know what? I think that kind of leads me to believe that he could make this pick because he said, listen, we're good TV. He was like, we
always lead the league in TV.
We haven't been to playoffs, but he started naming what is 25 of the top shows in the league were on TV last year with football games.
And a whole bunch of them involved
the Dallas Cowboys. It's like, we're good TV. I mean, it's a reality show. And what better reality show to have than, okay, I have a $55 million guaranteed quarterback who's talked about constantly, whether good or bad, and now I'm going to add the college lightning rod to my team
from the state of
Texas,
right?
To this team
Twitter would blow up.
It would blow up. Hey,
training camp. They have to be on Hard Knocks. We have to find a way to just put them on.
We would just have to do it. So people say, wait a second, you just gave Tony almost like a lifetime kind of contract. Trust me, Jerry Jones is a can-do guy. He would figure out a way to either move Tony. There would be some way out from under that because I will bet you Jerry thinks this is the most exciting college football player who ever played college football, and he wants him in the house that Jerry built. Jerry World.
That is for me though, that's an owner's mentality.
Exactly.
You can be an owner and think that way. And if he just wants to own the team and make money, then he needs to hire somebody else to be the GM, because we
can talk him off of this ledge.
You got to talk him off of that ledge.
Okay.
Because I feel like if you make that pick, you haven't gotten better in the first round unless you. Really, I don't think he's going to be a better quarterback than Tony Romo in his first year of playing.
Okay.
So if you move Tony Romo, right? Now you're not as good as quarterback this year. And if you draft Manziel and keep Tony Romo, you're basically getting nothing from a first round pick. And we know first round picks have to play now.
And Romo is what, 34?
He's 34.
34.
So now you've missed out. This is another opportunity to get a starter.
By the way, coming off back surgery, not that it was major, but it was back surgery. We know that. So here's my point. In a vacuum, I believe Johnny Manziel has a better chance of winning a Super Bowl than Tony Romo will ever have. Tony Romo is damaged psychological goods now. He will break your heart when you least when you need it most. He will not be there for you because he's made so many big bad plays for that football team. Not that he isn't talented, not that you could argue he has a better arm than Johnny, maybe he has better arm talent than Johnny, but listen, Johnny
Manziel. Jerry Jones believes that though?
I do.
Oh, yeah.
I just do. I think he's sold.
He can't believe
he
that.
He gave him $50+ million.
Guaranteed.
Yeah. So you're thinking,
how do you believe that? Like, this doesn't make sense to me.
And how do you pass up on an opportunity? You probably have 2 years left where you can legitimately make a run. Maybe 3, but let's say 2 years. You get an opportunity to get better around him, whether it's adding another defensive player, which they need, or adding another pass catcher. I just don't know how you make this decision. But maybe he's looking at it long term and saying, if he truly believes that, as the GM, then he should draft Johnny Manziel if they're just sitting there at 16.
Okay, but
he should.
To your draft, seriously,
Yeah.
if Jerry Jones, who does pull the final trigger on the draft, if he's sitting there looking at Brandon Cooks versus Johnny
He's taking
Manziel,
Johnny
come
in a
on.
heartbeat.
I mean,
I get
it would
If
be
he's there. Yeah, but he was talking,
shouldn't.
you said maybe moving up to get him. I don't think you can move up to get him and put yourself in that position. If he's sitting there at 16 and he's there for you, and like you said, if you truly believe he's the best player in the draft, and which a lot of teams do that, they say, you know what, we're going to draft the top player on our board at that time,
Right.
then I think you get him, if that's what you truly believe about Johnny
And I
Manziel.
think let's put it this way. I think he will. I don't think he should. That's the best way I can
Okay.
put it.
This is the time they say should mock
Wait a second.
Right,
So you said
exactly.
you think? Say it again. I'm sorry.
I think that Jerry Jones will draft Johnny Manziel if he's sitting there at 16. I agree with you, but I think he should pass on Johnny Manziel and draft a player who will help them win now because they paid Tony Romo to be that guy.
Okay.
And you're running out of time because he's 34 years old.
All right, let's talk about some other things you said. You had an interesting comment the other day about one Clowney on SportsCenter. We're going to play the comments, and then we'll talk about it.
Fun.
Isn't
I
it?
don't even know what
It's good
I don't
times.
remember what I'm saying anymore.
It's good times. Let's see.
When there's blood in the water, Jadeveon Clowney is a great white shark. Get him to the next level, give him some one-on-ones, give him some chances to get to the quarterback. There will be no more questions about Clowney's motor. This guy is the most talented defensive lineman, natural ability I'm talking, that I've ever evaluated. The Houston Texans do right if they take number 7.
Wow. Great white
We're talking
shark.
Lawrence Taylor meets Charles Haley meets Deacon Jones meets.
Talent-wise, he's one of those. He's in that when you just evaluate purely off of talent coming out. Yes, I'm not saying. I'm not going to go as far as Mel and saying it's all his fault if he's not a Hall of Famer. I just think he is talented enough to be one of the exceptional players in this league. I really do. I just haven't seen a guy like this. I mean, you're talking 6'6". 6'5", 266, 35-inch arms, the speed he has. I mean, he ran faster than your boy, Johnny Manziel. He could track him down from behind. And the explosiveness. Now, he's not a perfect, polished player, and there's some mild concerns in terms of his just his mental mindset this past year, I think. But I think he's going to get to the NFL, and I think he's going to realize, hey, I got to go get sacks. I got to get pressure on the quarterback. That's all I've got to do. And it's going to be harder, but it's not going to be any more complicated than it was this past year when he had a lot of bad thoughts going through his head and he was getting doubled and tripled and thrown away from and screamed away from and run away from and worn down, and everyone was scheming against him the entire game. I've never seen offenses game plan the way they game plan, get away from everything they do offensively just to wear number 7 down. And so I think when you look at his talent and his ability, I'll be blown away if he's not at least a very, very good player at the next level.
Ryan Clark, are you buying this?
I do. I'm all the way in.
Really?
I'm all the way in. My chips are in because this is a quarterback-driven league.
Right.
And when you find people that can rush the passer, defensive coordinators make sure they're put in position to do that. And I know we're talking about the Houston Texans and people say they don't really have a spot for them. They'll make a spot. They'll find a way to use a unique talent like this. And everybody points to last year. Last year, it's tough on the kid, but some people are even saying, should he even play?
Don't play.
Maybe sit out the whole year. Like you said, you are being schemed against. But I've watched games and watch him track down quarterbacks who are running away from, which a lot of plays went away from. Look at the plays he made this year. They were chasing the ball down. Also, okay, so we say, last year's tape is awful. What about the first 2 years? The play he made against Michigan was at the Outback Bowl.
Yep. Yeah.
That wasn't the only play that Jadeveon Clowney
Luan's
made.
going to be a top 7 pick.
Right.
Tackle, and he owned him.
Exactly. It wasn't the only play he made that season. It wasn't, his hype wasn't built off of one play. Now, the Heisman talk and all that, yes, that came from that highlight. That's when the world got to see what he was about. But he made plays, tackles for loss and sacks all season. He's a good football player. And with the new rookie contract, he has to go out and prove it. He's not going to make $60 million guaranteed right out the gate like a Jamarcus Russell did when he got his contract. He has to earn the second contract. So he's going to play football. I think he's going to be a really good player.
Okay, I have these concerns. We had Merrill Hodge sitting in your seat, and you know Merrill's take on this.
He's angry this year, man.
He's angry about Clowney.
He doesn't like Clowney.
He's going to be an undrafted free agent, according to Merrill
not that
Hodge.
far.
Well, the tape he showed, too, Merrill, in Clowney's defense, the Florida tape where he's standing straight up, he had a bone spur in his foot, and he came back in the game, and he couldn't put any pressure on his right foot.
I think he still has a foot issue that might have to get taken care of.
There was thought that he might get surgery after the season, but they decided he didn't need it. Yep.
Okay. Then Warren Sapp, Hall of Famer, says, gee, I looked at last year's tape. I questioned the motor. I'm putting words in. I'm sort of paraphrasing what he said.
Yeah,
I've heard from a couple of Hall of Fame players that I know. They question the motor because their point is, hey, if you put me in that circumstance last year, no matter how much career injury risk there might be, I don't care, triple, quadruple teams, I'm going to play 1,000 miles an hour because I don't know how to turn my switch off. Like it's football and I'm going to play football. So do you have any concerns about motor long term? Will there be occasional games when he will just sort of disappear?
He wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
He wasn't. And I could go, if you gave me enough time, I could probably put together a 30-clip reel of plays where it wouldn't look real good for him. You know? I could also put together that same reel for just about every single player that's double-digit sacks in the league right now. Guys on the defensive line wear down. They know when they've got to kind of save up their energy. Some go harder than others. And I would not put him in the top 30 percentile in terms of effort. I wouldn't put him in the top 50% of effort in terms of this past year.
Yeah.
But I still thought there were times where the vast majority of the time, he was giving good effort. He was on the field a lot more than most prospects. I thought it started in the North Carolina game when we had an ISO cam on a defensive lineman.
We did.
How many times have you ever had an ISO? And for people at home, that's a one camera isolated on one player. Usually that's the quarterback and the receiver and maybe a running back. It's never a defensive end. And so my counter to that is I come into my film room and I'll sit here and I'll show you play after play, guy after guy. Robert Quinn, pretty good in the league.
I know.
Yeah. Making a couple sacks. I could show you a lot of Robert Quinn plays. Teddy Bruschi is my guy when it comes to defensive front players and effort. And I know that if you pass the Bruschi test, that you've got enough effort in the motor.
But Teddy say sign the card.
Yeah, fill it out.
And I called every single year. I call Teddy, text him, give him a list of names, usually linebackers. I said, Teddy, you got to look at Clowney. There's some concerns. What do you think? Are you worried? And you've seen the responses from him. Right. Not worried at all. And so that and talking to guys in the league too, and just watching myself mostly. At first, I had the same concerns. When I watched all the evidence and all the tape and compared it to everybody else, I lost those concerns pretty quickly.
Okay. To your point, after his second year, the previous year at South Carolina, I sat right here and told Stephen A., I believe this kid is a better pass rusher right now than anyone in pro football. And I believe that. And if we're to the old Belichick draft mantra of traits, not performance, if we're just doing traits,
talent.
That's what I'm saying. You're to your point.
There's a lot of guys in the league that aren't nearly as talented as him that are going to be better pass rushers in 2014. If he does enough work and if he puts in the time and learns how to use his hands and adds a club and a rip and the different moves that you need, he's going to be special.
Todd McShay, thank you so much.
Yeah, good to be with you guys.
In the draft. Todd Marshall McShay, my bad. Talking playoffs, the Thunder travel to Memphis to try and regain the series lead from the Grizzlies tonight. OKC may be the favorite team in the series, but the Grizzlies have won 4 of their last 5 home playoff games. So, specifically against the Thunder, we're asking, what chance do you give the Grizzlies to win either of these games at home? Mr. Clark, Terry Clark. Can I just call you Terry?
It's actually my first name. It's Ryan Terry with a hyphen.
Oh, okay.
So, but
Ryan Terry.
Oh, well, then that's disqualified. You don't have to go
I can't get one? No, it's Ryan Terry.
I take that back.
Okay.
I didn't want the people to know that. Skip, I give him 100% chance.
100%?
100% chance.
That's a lot, actually.
That's a whole lot. To win a game in Memphis. They will win one. Just right now, I feel like since Russell Westbrook has been back, not that Kevin Durant hasn't played as well, I feel like the flow that they had during those games where Kevin Durant was scoring, what was it, 30 points for, I can't remember how many games it was. They had a flow to the game. Kevin Durant, he directed traffic. The game moved well. I feel like in the fourth quarter now, they kind of get to a point like, okay, who's going to do it this time? Is Russell going to take the shot? Is Kevin going to take the shot? And if you look at the last game, if Kevin Durant doesn't make a crazy 4-point play, and if of all people, Kendrick Perkins doesn't hit the game-winning shot, it doesn't even go into OT. So I really feel like going back to Memphis, where they're really strong, great home crowd. They won 4 out of 5 of the last playoff games there. And the way that this series has been going, there's no doubt about it. They win one. They'll probably win tonight.
Tonight?
Yes.
So Ryan Terry
Clark
predicts tonight Grizzlies win at home in what they call their grindhouse.
Right.
100%.
They do grind.
I didn't say they 100% go win tonight.
No.
They're 100% going to win one game.
Oh.
Maybe I didn't, what is it, elocute it?
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't elocute it the way I was supposed to.
But you are class personified.
This is true.
Yeah.
Stephen A., we miss you.
Yeah. I feel about the Thunder the way you feel right now about my San Antonio Spurs. I do not believe Memphis will win another game in this series. I'd call it a sweep going in, and now I have to slightly push this off to a 5-game series. So I'm going to say that the Thunder win both these games in the grindhouse. I just think they're much more talented than Memphis. And I agree with your point. The truth was it shouldn't have even gone to overtime. But the real truth was it took every last ounce of Grizzly guts to get to that point. That was, you talk about intangibles and effort and all those good things that don't show up in the box score. Tony Allen just playing his heart out, just possession. I don't know how he does it. I don't know. He must have been a tired young man. He's a middle-aged man in the NBA now. But after that game, because he gave every last drop guarding Kevin Durant. And he bothers him at about, they list him at 6'4". I think he's about 6'3", and they list Durant at 6'9". I think he's 6'10".
Right.
So he's giving away a whole lot of inches. But he gets up under him, and he bothers Kevin. But to your point, the guy who really bothers Kevin is on his own team. He's called the point guard. And I'm with you on this. I don't love that uneasy alliance between those two, and it reared its ugly head the other night. One guy took 28 shots, and that guy has led this league in scoring 5 straight times. And the point guard also took 28 shots in Game 2, a home playoff game. It's too many shots for the point guard to be taking, because he took some shots that I think Kevin Durant should have taken, including some late shots like the one that Kendrick Perkins magically was able to rebound because nobody blocked him out. He almost missed that little putback layup, but it went in, and so they got to overtime. But I'm going to say that talent just will out tonight. It will just on pure talent. Memphis has a hard time scoring the basketball when they really, really need to. They did it on guts the other night. Zach played huge. Zebo was great in that game. But when Ibaka and all of a sudden they bring in Thabo and Collison, they're just too good on defense to me.
I got Thunder in 6.
Okay, 6.
I got to watch Kevin Durant play up close for the first time, and it's amazing how high he releases the ball. Things in New Orleans at the Pelicans game, and the things that he can do. But I really feel like they need to figure out. I don't have a problem with Russell Westbrook taking 28 shots. I don't have a problem with that. It's just the timing of the shots. I feel like in the fourth quarter, Kevin Durant is supposed to have the ball. If he chooses not to shoot the ball, I feel like somebody else should get a chance to shoot it. But in the fourth quarter, listen, we got a guy, 5-time scoring leader in the NBA, scoring champion. He needs to have the ball in his hands. He's a guy you can't stop. There's no way to defend him from getting off his shot unless we've seen him block from behind.
Westbrook's not going to stop asking for the ball.
He's the point guard.
He has the ball.
He has
like
the ball.
He's dribbling it up.
Well, yeah, but he's not gonna. He doesn't want to give it to KD. He just doesn't.
He's a star. We've been having this superstar star conversation.
He's a superstar or a star?
He's a star.
Okay.
He's a star, not a superstar.
Oh.
Chris Paul's a superstar.
No, he's not. Oh, don't start. Don't
Chris Paul's a superstar.
Let's not.
Okay, before we go on that tangent, this is the last thing I want to say about Oklahoma City. To your point, being completely objective here, I'm going to remind you that a year ago, without the point guard Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant came up small in not 1 or 2, but 4 straight losses to Memphis after they won Game 1 at home. That is eerily similar to what is happening right now. It could be. So if you're right about tonight, you're saying one of, but let's say it is tonight, then I think the Thunder will wake up tomorrow and say, uh-oh, are we doing this again? Because Memphis will start thinking, we're doing it again. We're going 4 straight against these guys because they just did it a year ago.
After the year Kevin Durant's had his MVP-type year, I think that he'll will these guys to a win over the Grizzlies.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is our final take, our rapid-fire Q&A. And what feels like a sequel to the Yankees-Red Sox game that was just 2 weeks ago, Michael Pineda was ejected from last night's game for having what he confirmed and what the world knew was pine tar on his neck. Is it time for baseball to change the rules? Pine tar rules specifically.
Yeah, well, I definitely think it's time for them to change the rule or work on doing something to help these guys. Listen, Ryan Terrio, who's a two-time World Series champion, owns Traction Fitness, a place I work out at in Louisiana. He was talking to me like 2 weeks ago about the different things that baseball players do, whether it's to get grip on the ball or help the pitcher out, and different certain things where a second baseman will have something or a shortstop will have something, or a catcher was even talked about, having pine tar. And I texted him this morning, I was like, hey man, I want to talk about this, what do you think about it? Because I don't know as much as he would. And he said, listen, he's just dumb for putting it where he put it. He's like, he didn't think an HD camera was going to be able to catch pine tar on your neck. And so I think if it's this big consensus through the players, through the analysts, that a lot of these pitchers do this, let's just find a way to put it in the rules where they are allowed some amount of pine tar so they can control the ball better.
Yeah, I mean, enough of this thinly disguised hypocrisy. If everybody's doing it and it works, because in cold weather, and it was chilly at Fenway last night, you need to better grip the ball to protect the hitter so that you don't bean somebody. Why not? I'm sure they'll say, well, they'll open Pandora's box and they'll start using other agents on the ball that would make it dip and dart and do things that apparently pine tar does not. But in this case, this is a New York Yankee with Derek Jeter playing behind him as the captain. How can you not know enough to be so blatant? Because the first time, what was it, 10 days ago,
like
had it on his palm. So now you're going to put it up here on television? Well, guess what? You're going to get caught. Wouldn't Derek Jeter or Joe Girardi pull him aside and say, hey, next time, guy, you just put it somewhere else, or let your catcher do it.
But even, as a manager of an opposing team, though, you almost kind of don't want to point. It had to point it out last night because it was so blatant. You almost don't want to point out because you don't want them checking your pitcher, who's probably doing the same thing.
Of course. Thanks for listening to the podcast. You can catch First Take Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific on ESPN2.
The next big thing, the next new kid, the next overnight sensation, the next rookie, one to watch, the next Hall of Famer, the next intimidator, the next six-time, the next king. Next. Who's next? Let's find out. Names are made here. The History 300 at Charlotte, Saturday at 2:30 Eastern on ABC.